And we're back. Welcome bronies, Pegasisters, Palicorns, whoever. I don't want to waste too much of your time recapping the first part of the series, so let's just jump right into it. As Season 2 concluded with the Canterlot wedding, Season 3 picked right up where it left off with the Crystal Empire. This one feels like a direct follow-up to the previous special. Not only do Cadence and Shining Armor make a return, but in this one we get introduced to a brand new playset now available at these fine retailers. The Crystal Empire is a magical city that's been locked away for thousands of years. Celestia tasks Twilight with reviving the city's magic once it returns in order to ward off the ghost of the evil King Sombra. While yeah, the Crystal Empire as well as the Crystal Ponies are pretty much just another thing they could put in there as a new gimmick for the toy line, its integration into the show isn't really bad per se. It fits better than Cadence and Shining Armor in my opinion. Instead of new characters that we're immediately supposed to care oh so dearly about, it's a brand new foreign location that we get to explore. The rock candy buildings that we see throughout most of the Empire aren't all that visually striking, but they look really pointy and angular like actual crystals. It's a fun idea. So it's got nothing on the surreal Seussian architecture of Canterlot or the hominess of Ponyville, but it still doesn't feel out of place. There's some fun moments elsewhere, especially in the Crystal Castle. I love the way this thing looks, how it's this weird Eiffel Tower thing, that's so unpractical, I love it. The only way you're able to get in are these 4 little doors apparently. Yeah, and they wonder why the Empire fell. Again, like Canterlot Wedding, Part 2 of the special is infinitely better than Part 1. The first part is just about the main 6 going to the Empire and meandering around trying to get these depressed crystal ponies to remember stuff. In Part 2, the main 6 have to maintain this crystal fair, while Twilight has to explore the inside of the castle and find the Crystal Heart, an artifact which apparently Celestia, Cadence, nobody else knew about. I love this part specifically. The spiral staircase, the weird door that shows your worst fear, Twilight having to use black magic. It's like a Zelda dungeon. Twilight herself has this little arc of being afraid of failing the test that Celestia makes her go through with, that test being reviving the Crystal Empire. This is the first instance of Twilight going through this arc. If you've seen my first 2 Equestria Girls videos, you know what I mean. Honestly, as much as Celestia trusts Twilight, I don't know if sending Twi and her friends away for such an urgent matter is the best idea. It's a joke that a lot of people make about the show, but yeah, why couldn't Celestia just fly over and do it herself? The special's antagonist, King Sombra, isn't all that interesting. He's just an evil ghost who laughs and makes fake threats towards her heroes. It's a step down from It's a step down from Queen Chrysalis and a major step down from Discord. I feel like they were just playing it relatively safe with him. Same goes for the rest of the season. Season 3 is the very definition of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I honestly lump Season 3 in with Season 2 a lot of the time, considering how similar the two are, as well as how Season 3 is half the length of all the other seasons. I guess since Lauren was gone, they didn't just want to start throwing things at the wall. I respect that. There are hardly any new characters that we get introduced to. Of course you have Sombra, but there's also this one Pegasus named Lightning Dust, who they set up to be essentially what Trixie is to Twilight Sparkle, but for Rainbow Dash. Like a lot of the characters that we saw in Season 1, I wish they did more with her. I mean, they do bring her back in Season 8. A character who only appears in this season is Babseed, who's Applebloom's cousin who appears in the promptly titled Bad Seed. Get it? This episode gets carried by the one song, and is otherwise a really dated portrayal of bullying. I mean, it's an okay message, I guess, but I don't know. Half the time I was expecting Cool Cat to pop out and lecture to the audience about gun safety or something. The way it's shown in the episode is nowhere near how bullying actually works in real life. I mean, look at me, you think I don't know what it's like? Most of the other episodes are pretty good though. They do a few memorable ones with some morals that don't feel recycled. Sleepless in Ponyville is cool, Scootaloo finally gets her own Spotlight episode, Too Many Pinkie Pies is super fun, and Spike at Your Service has a lot of funny moments. And some pretty lame looking CGI. Hey, it was the early 2010s, they had to try it eventually. Just for Sidekicks and games ponies play both take place simultaneously, so you get hints of both of them at the end of each. It's an interesting concept, and I honestly don't remember if they did it in a later episode. Trixie comes back in what turns out to be a pretty epic encounter. After being scorned by all of Equestria, she uses this Alicorn amulet thingy, which we do get the backstory for, right? To take over Ponyville. Aside from the season's premiere and finale, it's the most epic the season gets in terms of scope. There's no far-off place that Twilight needs to travel to, but the emotional stakes of everything she's come to know as her home being on the line makes this one a great watch. Again, there's no big grand adventures like Dragonshy from Season 1. It's mainly focused around Ponyville for the most part. They don't go anywhere new that's not the Crystal Empire. One big change the show added was bringing back Discord, who apparently I just didn't talk about in the first part. When we do see him again, we get treated to some pretty creative animation. Discord's chaos powers give him the ability to just do whatever, sort of like the genie from Disney's Aladdin. At the end of the episode, he's functionally the same character, just not 100% evil. Fluttershy's method of changing him is actually by becoming his friend and giving him a chance instead of sitting there and poking him with a stick telling him to be good. It's nice to see that in this season they still keep the main six likable. Episodes like Apple Family Reunion and Too Many Pinkie Pies show that they haven't run out of ideas for these characters. Speaking of Apple Family Reunion, in my opinion, this season has the most consistent quality in music. All the songs in here are hits. Raise This Barn, Bab's Seed, Ballad of the Crystal Ponies, as well as the songs in the season finale, Magical Mystery Cure. This episode has a great setup, with Twilight having to figure out why all her friends' cutie marks are swapped. It results in, again, some pretty great musical numbers. I mean, A True True Friend, What My Cutie Mark Is Telling Me, I've Got to Find a Way, Celestia's Ballad, Morning in Ponyville, The Princess Twilight Sparkle, all great. The season 3 finale feels like a culmination of everything we've seen in the show so far. There aren't any big callbacks, and just like the season 1 finale, there's not that much of a threat in Equestria as a whole, but it does what the last two specials didn't do and focuses on Twilight and the main six. The ending gets me kind of emotional. I know the show went on for like a million more seasons after this, but it's a great happy ending for all the characters. And there it is. The moment that made a million bronies cry out in terror. The cooler Twilight. At the end of Magical Mystery Cure, Celestia congratulates Twilight for coming so far in her studies and gives her wings, now making her a Princess Twilight Sparkle. Now available at these fine retailers. People love to say that this is when the show jumped the shark, but honestly, it could be a lot, and I mean a lot worse. As we'll see in a bit, Twilight having wings is a big change, but it doesn't mess with the dynamic or structure of the show all that much. It is, however, another example of them shoving things into the show to put in the toys. But dude, there's only so many times you can complain about that. As much as it does stand out as its own cartoon, without Lauren, it was Hasbro's show to do what they wanted with. Season 4 was already announced by the time it aired, but I see why so many people consider this episode a finale to the show. Season 3 continues the golden age that encompassed the first two. I don't blame you if you confuse any Season 3 episodes as being from Season 2. Aside from the introduction of Twilight, it's such a nothing season. However, it did show that the staff, including showrunner Megan McCarthy, could keep the show going in the direction that it had been for the past 2 years. It still had new and memorable episodes, fun songs, and the characters are still very much intact. Season 3 ended in 2013, and was later followed up by... what the hell is that? As a kid, I had always wondered why the Season 3 finale was only one part. Apparently, it was supposed to be a 3-part special, starting with Magical Mystery Cure and moving into the Season 4 premiere with Princess Twilight Sparkle. Knowing that doesn't really change anything though. Season 4 feels like a new beginning for the show. It even starts with a callback to the pilot. It starts with Twilight and Canterlot, then going back to Ponyville, then all the main six exploring the Everfree Forest.
Yeah, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
It also takes place exactly 1 year after the pilot, so they had to know what they were doing. We get a bit of lore packed into this two-parter. Discord's original defeat at the hands of Celestia and Luna, the rise of Nightmare Moon, the castle of the two sisters, and this mysterious six-sided chest, which I'll talk about later, as well as the Tree of Harmony. All that stuff they add doesn't feel like weird retcons or anything, it just adds more depth to the world that we're already given. They don't go in and mess things up yet. But notice how I say yet. Speaking of adding depth, this season is when you see the biggest change in the show's tone. It feels a lot more like something aimed at older kids. Since Twilight isn't Princess Celestia's student, you don't get any more of those G.I. Joe PSAs at the end of each episode. Instead, you have this journal that the main six share. The humor also feels less cutesy and innocent. Yeah, there was a lot of slapstick and jokes made at characters' expense in the early seasons, but in this season it feels more in line with other cartoons that were airing at the time, like Adventure Time, Regular Show, and Gravity Falls. Which I'm not gonna say they were directly inspired by, but the fact that this season relies much more heavily on an overarching mystery than the others can't be a coincidence. Best guess that it was a response to cartoons in general. Not every cartoon in 2013 was a fantasy slice-of-life show with heavy continuity, mind you, but this is when they barely started to emerge. If they wanted to get the somewhat new online fandom for Western animation on board, this was the best way to do it. Again, mentioning Gravity Falls, that show's mystery was what kept a lot of fans engaged. Same with this season. There were so many theories back in the day of just what could be in this box. Throughout the season, the main six are given these random artifacts by people they help out, which become keys that they use to unlock the chest. It's a great way of tying almost every episode together, even the most basic slice of life ones that don't have an impact on the story. Something that has less of a bearing on the story is the Equestria Games, which is this season's equivalent to the Grand Galloping Gala. Random episodes build up to it, like Flight to the Finish, with the actual event taking place near the end of the season. The payoff of the Equestria Games is a meh episode, but man, do I feel bad for Spike here. There's a lot of new stuff in this season. You can kind of tell just by the episode premises that they were throwing everything they could at the wall. Main 6 get sucked into a comic book? Sure. Main 6 explore a haunted castle? The Breezies from G3 come back? Sure. Rarity gets possessed by an evil book? Do what you want. Fluttershy turns into a vampire, Sweetie Belle gets her own little Christmas Carol-esque episode about her and Rarity's past, the main 6 go to Pony, New York, Weird Al shows up. They obviously don't hit every time, and there are a few unmemorable ones, but you gotta commend them for trying so many new ideas, especially compared to Season 3, which played it super safe in fear of messing up what Lauren had created. Here they do not care. We also get some new locations thrown in. We finally see Manhattan, which for some reason just looks like New York, even though in Season 1 it looked like this. Which, like the comic book world, is kinda uncreative and weird. The main 6 frequently visit Celestia and Luna's old castle this season, either trying to fix it up or just explore it. I love how this sort of becomes a new tertiary setting for the show. It adds to the whole theme of uncovering an ancient mystery. Rainbow Falls, I think they made a playset out of. Season 3 didn't really bring out any new characters, but Season 4, again, they just give us a crap ton of new faces. To start off, we have Pinkie Pie's sister Maud, who I love. The Breezies I absolutely hate. You know you wrote a bad character when the G3 version of them is objectively better. They're both quote-unquote annoying, I guess, but the G3 Breezies are annoying in a fun way. The G4 Breezies are a burden on, like, everyone in the episode and have these really annoying Swedish chef accents. In Season 2, I think it was, Rainbow Dash reads this book about this character called Daring Do, which, as a kid, confused me about the lyrics to the DuckTales theme song. In Season 4, it's revealed that Daring Do and all the other things that happen in the books are just real. Like, the books are accounts of real things that happen. Also, the author's name did not age well. I get that they wanted to expand the world of the books, or somehow get the main 6 involved in them, but maybe they should have just waited for a later season because making them real, as fun as I think the concept is kinda lame. I guess because they had the Power Ponies episode in the same season, they didn't want to do the same concept twice, but, you could have maybe done an anthology or something where the main 6 get sucked into different stories. I don't know, they had the Daring Do assets, it's not like they weren't gonna use them. Ever wonder what it would be like if musician Weird Al Yankovic was in My Little Pony? I wonder no more because late in the season we're introduced to what is essentially his pony Sona, cheese sandwich. Now, not knocking other guest stars like Patton Oswalt or John Delancey, but he did the most here. Weird Al hits it out of the park with his performance, complimenting Pinkie Pie perfectly. Especially at this point, because Pinkie Pie herself started to get a lot more shrill and annoying. Andrea Lindman in Season 1 made her sound like a real person, but here they dialed the pitch and the volume of her voice up to 11. It's also the writing, too. They start to make her a lot more malicious in her humor. There's one scene in the episode Philly Vanilli where she makes Fluttershy cry. It's clear that they were prioritizing her being the comic relief a little too much. Rainbow Dash 2 to a certain extent, but it's not as bad. Her vocal performance and demeanor in most episodes is basically the same, except in a few episodes it feels like she lost a couple brain cells. But you know who is still intact? Discord. When he shows up in Season 4, he's very much still an antagonist. Most of the time he's not actively fighting against the main 6, but he's still a troublemaker who does everything in his power to mess with them. Whether that be in the premiere, or in Three's a Crowd, or in the finale where he just turns evil again for a bit. The finale gives us a bunch of answers to the questions that we see in Season 4, mainly just what's in this box. The last 2 episodes came out in May of 2014 with the 2-parter Twilight's Kingdom, wherein they bring back T-Rex, who was the main villain in the original My Little Pony special from 1986, aka Rescue at Midnight Castle. What we get is a super intense story about all of Equestria falling to its knees at the hands of what is essentially Pony Thanos. Twilight's season-long character arc of not knowing why she's a princess gets a proper payoff here, although Equestria Girls 1 serves the same purpose, but you know, they barely reference those movies in the show, it doesn't really count. Discord sort of gets a double redemption arc here, where he turns back to the dark side but then gets betrayed by T-Rex and has to learn the hard way that friendship really matters, like really matters. The scope of this special, compared to every other one, is so big and grand, you really feel the pressure that's put on Twilight as you see just the amount of destruction that T-Rex is able to cause. The fight between him and Twilight at the end is a major highlight, even if it only lasts like a minute or two. I can only imagine how many bronies clapped and cheered when this happened. It's such a far cry from any other confrontation they've done in the show, just having two characters shoot lasers at each other. It makes you wonder, who is this really for? I'm not gonna say that kids hated this, or that they weren't rooting for Twilight to beat up the bad guy, but the whole special, as much as I like it, feels like it's pandering to the brony fandom, which by the time it aired was starting to fall off. In 2014, people were moving on to other things, and the same mainstream hype that had been there in 2011 to 2013 was slowly evaporating. I didn't know when to talk about this, but speaking of pandering to the brony fandom, the references and stuff start to come into the spotlight more. Like the Sturpy cameo in Rainbow Falls. The way it's framed here, there might as well be a sitcom "Ooh" track playing in the background. At the end of the special, it's revealed that the box contained the Rainbow of Light, or whatever it's called in G4. Once the main six use it to disintegrate T-Rex into nothing, it burrows into the ground and makes this thing. Well, you better get used to the look of this castle, because believe it or not, this is where the rest of, as well as the majority of the show's run will take place. This castle replaces the Golden Oak Library as Twilight's home, as well as being her reward, I guess, for discovering her title as the Princess of Friendship. But what about the Castle of the Two Sisters? Originally, the writers were planning on making that Twilight's new home. But I guess making a toy of that wouldn't sell as much. Sigh. Season 4 is in a weird place within the larger continuity of the show. People like to split the show up into eras, but Season 4 really doesn't fit into any of them. Twilight has wings and is a princess, but there's no castle or any of the characters that would get pushed to the forefront in Season 5 and beyond. As much as I ragged on some of the stuff in this season, I really do have a huge nostalgia bias for Season 4. It was a season that, as a kid, I was actively keeping up with, or at least what I tried to keep up with. As a 4th grader, I thought the show was the best it's ever been. The show felt like it was finally catching up with the things I was watching on Cartoon Network and Disney at the time. It's not perfect, but I think Season 4 has a lot to offer. There's so much creativity in everything they try, from the weird episodes to the music, which I forgot to mention is good. It's always been good. To their use of continuity, to bringing back one of the franchise's most imposing villains for the finale. 10-year-old me couldn't have wished for anything better. People like to say that the show's last hurrah was the Season 3 finale, but what do I think? It was Rainbow Rocks. Thanks for watching. As always, if you want to see more from me, subscribe and click the little bell icon next to it. Follow me on my socials linked in the description for updates and other stuff. I can't think of a better outro, so until next time, goodbye.